my direction, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is issuing guidance for communities of faith.
Let me speak to the seniors first. It is real. Protect yourself.
The giant elephant in the room is about finances. It's what. Let's be clear. That's the elephant in the room.
Just because you had church does not mean you got faith. Some of you guys had church because you needed that offering, and you put people in jeopardy. Some of you did that. Now I'm not speaking fair about it. Just because somebody had church, sometimes people use those scriptures to twist them because they need the offering.
How do we create trust with our faith community, in our faith community, where people will feel all right about bringing their children back?
Pastors asked if the city or county would take action against churches that did meet on Sunday.
What types of penalties will be incurred for those organizations that are beyond the 10 limit?
Sam Page answered by phone.
The penalty really is the risk to the people in the room when the coronavirus is in our community.
Cynthia J. Finch worked with Vice Mayor Gwen McKenzie, the Knox County Health Department, and UT Medical Center to put a reopening plan together for 60 churches in the African American community.
Reports have that African Americans are disproportionately impacted by this virus. So it's important to us as a community to make sure that our people are safe.
I think I serve one of the greatest churches in the world.
Bishop Vedius Gaines led the congregation at Greater Metropolitan Church in Detroit. The 72-year-old husband and father died from the coronavirus.
Protect yourself. Follow the guidelines. You were young, but now you're older. God has not forsaken you. God has not distanced himself from you. But you have to help yourself and practice social distances. Communicate with your children and grandchildren and those who care for you. Believe them when they tell you that you must stay in.
I told my children, don't be afraid. Don't be neurotic. Yes, it's out there, but God is out there too.
Pastors from each church have had weekly conference calls talking through how screening, social distancing, and worshiping will go hand in hand.
We as a group have said we're going to require people to wear a mask. We're going to have people to sit in family groupings.
Every time somebody talks about the virus, you ought to say Jesus. I can't hear nobody here. When they talk corona, you ought to say God. God. God is bigger than the virus. God is bigger than our struggle.
Believe them when they tell you you just can't go down to the room in the senior citizen home where they play checkers and chess. Those days are over. You must stay in. And your apartment, your home is now the church house.
Churches will do temperature checks and sign in so they can track who was at church if someone gets sick.
People want to come to their churches, but they also want to be safe, and they also want to live.
Today I'm identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services.
I think that it would be irresponsible for pastors to put in jeopardy the health, safety, and welfare of their parishioners.
Yes, it's out there. Yes, but God is out there too. You ought to never talk about the virus without talking about God. God. But God is out there too.
And we're going to open our churches again. I think CDC is going to put something out very soon. You're going to see some incredible numbers starting in June, July. You're going to see some incredible numbers because it's coming back.
Non-essential. We have been discounted and dismissed, but we make a difference.
Got to get our churches open. We got to get our country open. These governors have to start doing what they're supposed to be doing.
We can respond to Republican misinformation by ensuring that good information gets out.
I call upon governors to allow our churches and places of worship to open right now. If there's any question, they're going to have to call me, but they're not going to be successful in that call.
Keep 6 feet. Better keep 6 feet, and don't forget that you could be one day 6 feet under.
Man of hospitality, a great servant. He would feed the hungry at his church.
Bishop Gaines and at least 10 other church leaders have lost their lives due to COVID-19. He says the number could be as high as 15.
I have personally funeralized and buried 8 of my members who have died directly or indirectly related to coronavirus.
The governors need to do the right thing and allow these very important, essential places of faith to open right now for this weekend.
Members of Bishop Robert Smith Jr.'s church are mourning his death.
Just a great man of God.
If they don't do it, I will override the governors. In America, we need more prayer, not less.
Hartford Memorial Baptist also struck by the coronavirus. Reverend Charles C. Adams says at least 10 of his members have tested positive and 6 more have died.
They've been young, middle-aged, and seasoned saints. This virus does not discriminate.
One member was ready to work for the county.
When she didn't show up for the swearing in, I think it was going to be done remotely, a family member went over to the house and found her deceased. But they are concerned that it is corona related.
So a man called me and he said, you got to open the churches. You got to open them. And he's somebody I respect a lot. Last thing I thought he was a pastor. And then I found out he was a pastor. And I'd like to ask my friend, Pastor Darrell Scott, to say a few words. You are terrific.
It's empty now because Argywall says Darrell and Belinda Scott weren't making payments on time. Facing eviction, he says they moved out so quickly.
And he owes you $563,000.
Argywall says it was a lease-to-own deal. This handwritten agreement signed by the Scotts shows they were making weekly rent payments.
I've never heard of that before. Why is he paying for this weekly? Because he get collection from the church. He's basically living week to week. Yeah, that's right, yeah.
In text messages to Argywall, Scott concedes his numbers are down at the church daycare, and he's driving a 9-year-old car, adding, I don't live lavishly.
Is this lavish living to you? Of course it is.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your bold leadership. I really believe that the effects of this pandemic would have been much more severe if it had not been for measures that you enacted and that this administration has enacted. This president has pledged to give assistance to underserved communities that are impacted by this COVID-19 virus. Coincide with the president's already existing initiatives in the urban communities throughout this country. This president's providing PPP loans that are focused in and on minority and urban and underserved and disadvantaged and distressed communities. He's provided billions for entities that are staples in the black community, child care centers, and so they can remain open during this time. I've lived under 12 presidential administrations. This president has been the most pro-black president in my lifetime. But when I say pro, I'm saying it pro in the sense of being proactive. He's been proactive rather than reactive to issues concerning minority, underserved, and disadvantaged communities than any other president in my lifetime.
Don't forget that you could be one day 6 feet under. I just, I can't make y'all think like I'm thinking. I can't make y'all think like I'm thinking. I can't make y'all think like I'm thinking. But this thing has helped me. It has made me realize my own mortality. And I can honestly tell you of a truth today. If I die, I'm not worried about that. I will not be afraid. I will not be subject. I told my children, don't be afraid. Don't be neurotic. Yes, it's out there. God is out there too. You ought to never talk about the virus without talking about God. Every time somebody talks about the virus, you ought to say Jesus. I can't hear nobody here. When they talk corona, you ought to say God. God. God is bigger than the virus. God is bigger than our struggle. He's bigger.
Our bishop has been a friend as well as a spiritual shepherd to so many of us here at New Deliverance and around the country. He will be missed by us all. Saints, don't stop praying. In the next few days, the church will send out information in respect to the final arrangements in this season of social distancing.
We just don't want to be in the newspaper to say, church reopened, and someone was infected, and they came to church, and now 180 people are infected. We don't want that message to be about Knoxville, Tennessee.
My wife convinced me, along with my education committee and others, who said, Pastor, you got to do more than just do what you want to do. You got to do what's best for everybody.
Keep 6 feet. Better keep 6 feet, and don't forget that you could be one day 6 feet under.